Chapter 25: Birth Dates and the Elements of Energy. The Ingredients Required for Success. As I mentioned earlier in this book, when working on the internet, I began reading a pop-up about birth sign traits, and something struck a chord. The idea that your birthday had some relevance in understanding relationships seemed to ignite an interest within me. After all, if nature created a butterfly by the means of such a complex metamorphosis, then surely nature would not just randomly throw you a birth date. At least that was my thinking anyhow. Shortly after leaving my first wife, I began working as a residential social worker. I worked at several homes designed to house children aged between 11 and 17, children who displayed very challenging behaviour. I used the information that I gathered on birth sign traits to help me understand the children better. Although it was not an exact science, it did prove to be a very useful tool indeed. Birth signs helped me to gain an insight into how to approach each child based on their particular need. While working in care, I also acquired the knowledge to look beyond the unruly behaviour caused by the ego and the body. This allowed me to see the real person and not just a negative projection given out. I left care after 2 years, armed with the knowledge of how to look beyond the person's outer behaviour, which then enabled me to glimpse the true essence of a person. However, at the time, I was totally unaware of what name to attach to that essence. I kept an eye on birth signs, and little did I know that they were to become a large part of my life's work. After leaving my job in care, I decided I wished to work as an hospital porter. I had no idea where the thought of being a porter came from. Many of my friends questioned my intentions, wondering why I wished to make such a bizarre career change. One friend even mentioned that she felt it was a backward step. I only knew that I wished to follow my intuition. I often say to people that I have faith that everything in life is working as it should do. However, the more I thought about it, the more I realized I don't have faith. Faith is believing in something that seems to be unbelievable, something that you have no proof of. I don't have faith. I have knowing, because I have proven it to myself. Here is an example of how I have used this knowing in my day-to-day life. I was living in West Yorkshire at the time, and I decided to move to Texas. Austin, Texas, to be precise. Why, I hear you ask? I had never been to the USA, and I had no yearning to do so. Then one day, I was practicing my visualization. As I mentioned earlier, I focused on a set scene in my mind. The scene that I was using at the time consisted of a place in the woods. In the scene, I was walking through the woods towards a smiley tree, a tree with a large arched branch that resembled a smile. As I was walking, I noticed a woman coming towards me. She didn't speak and walked straight by me. 3 days later, I did a Skype therapy session for a woman who lived in Austin. It was the same woman from my visualization. The next time I did my wood visualization, a different woman was walking toward me. The woman was dressed in clothes that I could only describe as something Robin Hood's girlfriend would wear. The period dress, I felt, was merely informing me that the lady no longer lives in my world, and I won't be doing a Skype session with her anytime soon. I asked the lady why she had come to me. She walked up to me and handed me a chisel, a sculptor's chisel to be more exact. I asked her what the chisel was for. She said that it was to help me to sculpt my future. Then she showed me the woman from Austin. My ego said straight out, I'm not going to Texas just because you gave me a chisel. I need much more proof than that, I said. The lady then gave me a picture in my mind's eye of Edward G. Robinson, the actor. She also gave me the years of 1904 and 1927 and the date of February the 14th. I opened my eyes, grabbed my phone and looked up Edward G. Robinson on Wikipedia. He was born in Romania and his family moved to the USA in 1904. I went on to read that he married his first wife in 1927 and that his wife's father was a sculptor. I couldn't find the February 14th link, but I was already convinced about my next step. I began making plans for the move the very next day. When I told my family and friends about my move, some thought I was mad. The majority know me and know that I do strange things. However, things always seem to work out. I moved to Austin, and after spending my first weekend there staying at the woman's house, the very woman I did the Skype session for, I then managed to rent a place and began to settle. I was selling my books and I arranged a couple of seminars to make some funds. One particular lady who bought a book was to become my next teacher partner. We moved in together and guess what? Her birthday is February the 14th. What do you think about that? My suggestion is to follow your path wherever it takes you. Back to my unusual choice of job. So I started work as a porter at the local hospital, and I loved it. Using the patients' birth dates, I would try to describe them and their behaviour, and the patients would give me feedback. Bizarrely, I would have a Libran day. Every patient that day would be a Libran. Another day, it might be a Leo day. How amazing is that? Is it coincidence or something more? You make your mind up. Eventually, I became quite accurate with the birthdays and personas. The large majority of patients loved our interactions and said how it took their mind away from their treatment. While chatting to one patient, I said, "I bet you were a good nurse." The patient asked me, "How did you know that I used to be a nurse?" At the time, I honestly had no idea how I knew. It just came out in conversation. So feeling awkward, I would move the conversation on swiftly. Eventually, I became aware of and recognized my claircognizance, the gift of knowing. I had spent many years attempting to develop the gift of clairvoyance and found it difficult to say the least. Once I recognized what my innate gifts were, I realized that I'd been using them for many years. With this knowledge, things became much clearer to me. At work, I was often asked to the office where my manager informed me of complaints. One such complaint was from a staff member. The member of staff had expressed their concerns about me speaking to patients about their birthdays. My boss said that he felt it inappropriate to be so personal with the patients and said that if I must talk to patients, then keep it to simple subjects like the weather. I didn't listen, and trouble was my constant companion. Proof of my imperfection were that some complaints were justified and some were not. I would talk to patients with no restrictions, encouraging them to speak about whatever topic they wished, be it their birth date, their beliefs, their illness, or even their imminent passing. I would listen and say what it felt right to say. I would on occasion have a sing-along with patients, leaving them in a happier place than when I met them. Many people in my workplace seemed to want to stop me communicating with patients, yet my own intuition seemed to tell me otherwise. I remember on one occasion I was transporting an older lady to transfusion and back. I spoke about her birthday and she expressed her interest in New Age things. En route back to the ward, she spoke of a lady in the next bed to her. She said that the lady was an astrologer. Once we got on the ward, the lady mentioned our conversations to the astrologer, saying how brilliant she thought I was. The astrologer, a Libran, took an instant defensive demeanour and volunteered the fact that she was an astrologer. She then asked me, "What is a Libran like?" I foolishly decided to rise to the challenge. I explained to her that I wasn't an astrologer and that it was an intuitive thing with me. I went on to say that I found that Librans tend to live in their own thoughts and they are keen to represent other people. I have found that they also enjoy space to relax and think. My Libran friends are the ones who suggest that I take a witness along with me to the office when my boss wishes to tell me about complaints, highlighting the importance of representation by someone who isn't emotionally involved. Librans are also good listeners and will listen to your story, and if they thought you were negligent in some way, then they would definitely take you to task. They may even take you to court if they felt the injustice was grave enough. The Libran shattered my confidence by saying what a load of rubbish. I felt the time had come to leave the ward, with thoughts of yet another complaint and one more trip to the office. Once off the ward, a fellow porter approached me looking rather annoyed. He began telling me about an accident he had on the way to work. He went on to say that he had been thrown from his motorbike. He said that it happened in the hospital grounds and that it was caused by riding into a deep pothole in the road. I asked him if he'd been hurt. "No, I'm fine," he said, "but my bike is a real mess though." He told me that he was definitely going to put a claim against the hospital. What irony, I thought. The porter, believe it or not, was a Libran. I felt that someone, somewhere, wished to keep my confidence up with birthdays. I later went on to learn that your elements are the relevant factors and not your birth sign. Then later, the influence of the elements of your family became clearer to me. By looking at the elements in my family, I was able to understand how the integral parts would interact. This brought an understanding of my own upbringing. Understanding elements helped me to eventually help other people do the same. By aiding their understanding of themselves and their family, it helped them to identify the black sheep of the family. The black sheep was more often than not the one seeking my help. Before we look at the elements, I would like just to add that I know that a lot of the information that I write about may seem surreal and complicated to some people. However, please try to remember this one thing. I write about my life's work that it took me most of my life to learn. I still learn more and more every day, so take the information that you need from my work and try not to get bogged down in the details. To be perfectly honest, learning the Golden Rule is the one and only important factor to grasp from this book, because it shows you how to become your own teacher. The rest of my story merely shows you why I have faith, or should I say, why I have knowing in the Golden Rule. So be your own teacher. Chapter 26. Let us look at the structure. As I mentioned earlier, the elements are a big key to your character and to what drives you. So elements are a perfect place to start your self-discovery. Find your 2 innate elements in the following table and become aware of the starting point of your life. Question: why are we given 2 elements from birth and not all 4? The elements are the ingredients of us all, and each element creates a particular drive and behaviour. The day you were born depicts which elements make up your energy body, so your needs are within you from day one. Many believe that the framework of life is set out before we are born. I would go a step further and say that we and the people in our world agree to play roles for one another to help each other learn whatever we need to evolve. Everyone is helping everyone in this life, if you can only see it. We choose elements to set the scene for what we feel is the most pressing lessons we need to face. If you don't learn, then the lessons become harder and harder. So try not to pity people. Try instead to understand the silver lining. A particular TV advert used to say, "It does what it says on the tin," speaking of a tin of varnish. Our main elements compel us to do what it says on our tin. We are all cocktails of the elements. A couple of ingredients from birth, and then our personal world, our early family life, add new ingredients. Sometimes our family life adds more of the same ingredients that we already have, and sometimes we are confronted with new elements. It all depends on what your purpose is. Balancing your unique cocktail into a pleasant experience is the goal of your life. A cocktail that is not too sweet, not too bitter, not too strong, and not too weak. By managing, maintaining, and better balancing my own cocktail adequately over the last few years, I have gained an insight and an understanding into how the balance can be achieved. Here are the elements' ingredients simplified. Water wishes to care and feel. Air wishes to think and listen. Earth wishes to serve and support. Fire wishes to teach and inspire. These attributes are undiluted by issues. They are the innate drive given from each element. By just using these simplified versions, you can very quickly recognize who is who in your world. Learning about the elements present in your character can help you to understand yourself and explain some of your actions. They can also help clarify the behaviours of those you share your world with, leaving room for issues to be resolved and bridges to be built. Elements are also clues to your vocation in life, your purpose. So in answer to the question, why are we given two elements from birth? The answer is, two elements will be the large signpost pointing towards your need and ultimately to the area of your purpose and the area that needs learning. If you had all four elements, then you wouldn't need to be here because you would be perfect. Question: so how does it work? Each element has three signs: Earth, Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. Air, Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. Water, Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. Fire, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Each sign has two sides. For example, Capricorn December, Capricorn January, Aquarius January, Aquarius February, and so on. Check out the elemental table on screen to find your two starting elements. Chapter 27. How the structure works. In the Luc Besson film, The Fifth Element, Milla Jovovich plays Lilu, who is portrayed as the fifth element, the perfect weapon against evil. Her perfection is due to her character innately having the perfect balance of all the four elements and the gifts that they bestow. More simply put, she has the balance of the divine. We are born with two elements, so we need one another to understand the other two. We are bound by our need to learn. If you are born with fire, then you will need to learn air. Fire is never matched with air from birth, so fire must seek out air and vice versa. The reason being that fire needs air to burn and air needs fire to rise. The exact same thing goes for earth and water. Earth is never matched with water at birth. Earth must learn water to be fertile, and water needs the earth to flow upon. It is all part of the plan. We must seek out and learn to be whole. An understanding of all the elements is needed to attain any realistic hope of balance and peace. The ultimate goal, in my opinion, is to learn the lessons that you have been born to learn and attain your purpose. Then to find a working balance between the four elements. By gaining this understanding, you will have taken a fundamental step towards knowing yourself and all others. You will have grasped what drives individuals, and you will stop judging people for not having your original drive gift, and will no longer judge others' gifts as faults. Question: so what gets in the way? Everyone, without exception, is damaged by their upbringing. How can we know what our children need when we have yet to understand and meet our own needs? We merely pass on our ignorance. Chapter 28. Drives and Personas. For many centuries, great minds have intuited many great things. Astrologers have mapped out the energy calendar. Using my own birthday sign, Leo, as an example, the Leo birth sign begins in July and ends in August. You may, as I did, question why the Leo starts in July and finishes in August. Why not have all August or all July as a Leo sign? The answer is it creates two types of Leo, a Leo Cancer and a Leo Virgo. Then, when the Leo is placed into a family group, a totally unique Leo is created. Visionaries intuited much of this information centuries ago. Even the concept of elements creating our personas is hardly a new one. Empedocles, a Greek philosopher, is credited with the theory that these four elements are at the root of all existing matter, including me and you. Yes, great souls who found their purpose have laid many trails for us to walk, and indeed to lengthen. We are all responsible for our own and the world's evolution. We are all in this life together, with no person more important than another. I don't wish to go too deep into birth signs, as I have much information to cover, and I may give birth signs a book of their own one day. Here is a summary of the kind of personas each element manifests. You may be unfamiliar with the element, however, the behaviour that it promotes may be much more familiar to you. Each element has a material gift, the drive, and also a spiritual gift. The more balance and positivity you attain, the more gifts you acquire. The air person, keywords, thinker, listener, dreamer. They communicate their feelings through thought. The influence of air creates an urge to think, listen, and to be imaginative, to aid their drive to represent other people. These are their material gifts. Their spiritual gift is clairvoyance, the ability to see spirit energy. The water person, keywords, carer, feeler, sensitive. They communicate their love through caring action. The influence of water creates a strong urge to care for other people. Caring and sensitivity being their material gifts. Their spiritual gift is clairsentience, the ability to feel the emotions and feelings of other spirits. The fire person, keyword speaker, teacher, inspirer. They communicate their love through verbal warmth. The influence of fire creates the urge to speak, to teach, and inspire. These are their material gifts. Their spiritual gift is claircognizance, the ability for spirit to speak through them. The earth person, keywords server, worker, discerner. They communicate their love through material support. The earth elemental gives an urge to work, serve, and to be practical. These are their material gifts. Their spiritual gift is clairaudience, the ability to hear the words of other spirits. As I mentioned earlier, we are all a cocktail of one or more of these elements. Once you have become aware of your main drive that makes up your own character, then the next step is to recognise and accept the drive that makes up another's character. This will help you in your day-to-day life and will lay the foundation for bridges to be built within your relationships. Most people are judgmental to some degree. However, by using your new understanding of the four drives, along with the golden rule, you will become much less so. Here is an insight into the origins of judgmentality. Most judgments arise because of differing drives, and in turn through different opinions. I believe that all judgments have the elemental differences at their core. Let me explain. The worker earth person may often judge the caring water person as being too fussy, too sensitive and weak. They may also judge the speaker fire person as a gobby know-all who is too selfish. May also judge the listener air person as being ignorant, lazy and away with the fairies. The other elements may judge the earth person as blunt, boring and insensitive. A vast majority of people tend to see the gift of others as a fault. The reason for this is that their gift element will have its exact opposite element, and parity will depend upon one or both having the understanding that neither is solely correct and that what they need is to find a balance with their opposite. Being the worker earth person is the one element that most people experience, to varying degrees. Many people criticise those who don't work. Again, the criticism is merely a projection of anger built up inside a person who is unhappy with their own life. I now love my work, and so only see those who don't work or don't enjoy their work as people who are lost, as indeed they are. Your power is to change your own situation and not to focus on the situations of other people. Again, the golden rule can be used here. Remember, you should not judge people because you are not aware of why they are here and what they have come to learn. So get on with your own learning. When I was working in a workplace that was wrong for me, as I described in the early parts of this book, I was firmly planted in what is thought to be the real world, and I was very unhappy. If you are a natural earth person, then you are naturally resilient and robust. But many who have adopted this role suffer as I did. My suffering was due to the fact that I tried to be too earthy, but I wasn't as gifted as a true earth person. My older brother, who is a true earth person, is a successful businessman and he serves his family well. His family's material needs are met implicitly, and his success is a credit to his gift. Many years ago, before my awakening, I had no respect for my brother's gift. In fact, I was jealous of his success. My jealousy was born as a direct result of seeing someone else achieve that which I failed to achieve. If I was an electrician, you wouldn't employ me as your dental surgeon. Every person has their job. I was merely working in the wrong field and judged myself for failing. I was no more a failure than a dentist who tried to rewire his own house and then electrocuted himself. Foolhardy maybe, but not a failure. In truth, I had done the very same thing, set myself up to fail. This was due to the lack of awareness I had of my own unique abilities. So now, with this awareness, along with a willingness to follow my path that this knowledge has shown me, I have found an inner peace born from knowing who I am and what I'm here to do. I have learnt to appreciate the gifts and intentions of other people. Understanding their gifts gives me the opportunity to begin to learn some of their abilities, and eventually balance their gift with my own, and vice versa. Just like in my story, many work too hard. Being too earthly leads to being too grounded, and due to continually being active, they very often become thick-skinned and seem to be too insensitive to many non-earth people. This is explained in more detail in the energy chapters. The natural earth person, or the person trying to be too grounded and earthed, like I was, are firmly planted in their day-to-day life, and at the centre of that life is the family. Working for the family can be their obsession, working even to their own detriment. Their family being so important means that is exactly where most of their lessons manifest. Earth people tend to have the lack of responsibility for their own needs, especially when lacking the influence of the fire element. Too much of the earth element leads to taking on too much responsibility. If your shoulders are full of the chores of life, with little respite for emotion or sentiment, then your immediate surroundings become your whole world, a world which limits your potential. No time for spiritual paths, air things, or indeed anything that takes you out of what you perceive to be your own small world. A world that you try to carry on your shoulders like Charles Atlas. A world that buckles your wheels of potential. Too much of the earth ingredient, even in a natural earth elemental, can lead to bitterness and anger welling up inside. Very often, this creates many addictions and ill health. Being too much earth means that the people that share your world, your partner, your children, etc., may feel abused or neglected due to missing out on the gifts that the other elements would bestow. So working tirelessly and enduring life simply offers a hard target for those around you to struggle to match. Therefore, many who are themselves ill-equipped with your gift for coping perish as I did. The lack of balance with the other elements can lead to skepticism and a lack of belief in anything outside the norm. If you can't see it, taste it or feel it, then it doesn't exist. With a better balance with the air element, then their skepticism often guides them towards the sciences. Ironically, many through their attempts to disprove the magic of the universe end up finding the proof that brings faith. So far from being a fault, their skepticism and atheism becomes a forum of seeking proof and answers. Everything should stand up to questioning, provided cynicism does not manifest itself and taint the judgment of the questioner. This generally happens when the person has a lack of balance with the air element. I was that person. What about you? Chapter 29. Learning to be true to yourself. I have found through my work that many people are not true to their base elements, their true self. Although we are all influenced by our family in one way or another, some are influenced to a much greater degree. Some move from their base elements that they were born with and adopt the opposing two elements, so going from one extreme to another, yet they still lack any semblance of balance. This tends to happen when we react to life rather than learn from it. A client of mine was born air and water, a listener, feeler, and yet was showing the obvious characteristics of fire and earth, a speaker, discerner, which happened to be the elements of her mother. My client admitted that she dominates her husband, just as her mother dominated her. Her husband annoyed her, and her anger was due to seeing herself in her husband's behaviour. She saw herself as weak due to her own inability to stand up to her mother. Once my client realised this, through using the golden rule, she began moving back towards balance, and then her life began to improve. Her relationships with her husband and her mother improved immensely. My client, with her move back towards her innate elements, became quickly aware of her spiritual gifts. When she arrived for our first session, she believed in nothing about the afterlife and had to be cajoled over and over again by a former client of mine to attend the session. After the session was over, she decided to bring her husband to a second session. They then both attended my life awareness classes. After 3 weeks of attending the class, my client's father, who is in the afterlife, appeared to her in a meditation. He spoke to her about his passing, and she was amazed by her own abilities. Remember, we are all amazing. All it had taken was for my client to reconnect with her innate air ingredient. I explained to her that maintaining that connection and moving closer to the middle ground between her mother's persona and her own original persona would gradually enhance her spiritual gift. After reading back over this section, I realised that I seem to infer that it is easy to move back towards your innate elements. So for instance, if you were born a very sensitive person like my client, who through reacting to the pain that she had experienced in her life had become more and more discerning. It takes an immense amount of courage to move back towards the pain, to gain any hope of the balance that stands between sensitivity and discernment. Here's just a thought that came into my mind. If you were brought up in a family that totally ignored your needs, then later in life you had a family of your own and you chose to meet your children's needs implicitly, then you have reacted to life and not learnt from it. You will have gone from one extreme to another, and you would still be abusing your inner child. Not to mention that meeting your children's needs without discernment is also abuse, which creates a lose-lose scenario. A question that I have been asked on many occasions, especially in my life awareness groups, is how can I improve my spiritual gifts? Many people who wish to develop their spiritual mediumship attend circles and groups and often become frustrated by their lack of progress. The main reason why I stay away from these groups is that they focus on only the gift and ignore looking at themselves. The key to improvement is to develop as a person, then the rest will come naturally. Question: so how will you know if you are true to your base elements? The answer is the golden rule will bring to light your elemental deficiencies and will fairly accurately ascertain your growth needs. Work, rest, play and care. These are the elements simplified. Work equals earth, play equals fire, rest equals air, care equals water. Question: can you spot your weakness? Are you all work and no rest? Are you all care with no care for yourself? Balance is the way forward, for without it you may find that your actions, just as in my just a thought example, may well be doing more harm than good, to either you or to others, or to both. Chapter 30. Communicating True Love. The goal in life is true love, the kind of love that benefits everyone. Question: so what is true love? Question: and how can we attain it? The high level of love produced when excited gives us a conscious glimpse of what it feels like to be part of the universe. That may seem strange to say, I know, but let me explain in more detail. Just like spirit energy in the afterlife, who have no physical body, no glands to block the connection they have with everything. And I mean everything, that includes you and I. In the afterlife, we have all that we need. No insecurity, no power struggles, no losers, only win-win connections. While on the earth plane, we, when excited, open our physical body, open our glands, to experience a similar connection with the people around us. This is what we are all searching for, this wonderful feeling of contentment. While living an earthly life, sexual intercourse is probably the closest thing that most people experience that offers this similar feeling of connection. We all yearn for our origins, to feel like we are part of everything once again, to relive the security that it brings. No needs or fears, just love. We yearn for this if we consciously know it or if we subconsciously know it. Every emotion, action and behaviour that we follow in our life, without exception, is to gain this feeling once again. Each element promotes the use of intimacy from a particular gland. Looking at the elemental chart to find your two original elements. Using my birthday as an example, the 17th of August, making my original elements fire and earth. So speaking to people intimately, like when I was speaking to my dying brother, we fed each other's fire. Having sex with Isabel fed mine and her earth element. For many years, I was unable to enjoy intimacy from the heart and mind, air and water elements. My blocked thymus and pituitary glands needed development. Underdeveloped chakra glands lead to blockages, which detaches us from the universe and the energy flow that we yearn for or yearn to give. Writer James Redfield talks about the control dramas that we use to gain personal love in his Celestine books, and I must say that I was very inspired by some of his points. To this day, I still recommend some of his books to my clients. So how can we feel true love at all times without having to fight for it? The answer is by understanding how we communicate love energy and also understanding how other people communicate love energy. So find your soulmate by finding your own soul first, after which you will attract a person who has found theirs. The women in my life have taught me much, especially my second wife, Vic. Vic helped me to take my awareness to a whole new level. Our relationship took me from a person who communicated largely through the throat chakra and sacral chakra, verbally and sexually, to a person who could communicate to some degree on all 5 levels. I met Vic around the time I was waiting for Isabel. We met in a cafe, and while we were chatting, I asked her what her birth date was. Vic seemed puzzled by my question, but disclosed that she was born on the 30th of July. A Leo, interesting, I thought. I explained that I was working on ideas about people and their birth dates, and how the day they were born gives much information about their persona. I began to give Vic an example using her birth date. Vic seemed very interested in the information, but confessed that she felt shocked by its accuracy. After the mini reading, we both began discussing our day-to-day life, and our conversation brought to light that Vic was 11 years my junior, which instantly switched my ego to friend mode. My ego was telling me that 11 years age difference was out of my moral boundary. As I was leaving, Vic asked me for a business card, which I gladly gave to her. We said our goodbyes and I set off for my work. As I drove away, the words of Tessa, my teacher, came to my mind. Only last week, she asked me if I would consider having a relationship with a younger woman. I said no, never. I don't do young, I said. I prefer someone older and wiser. And I joked that even older women deserve the treat of a younger man. I dismissed any thought of anything but friendship with Vic. Vic rang me on occasion, mainly to chat about the things that were going on in her life. Generally, she rang when she'd been drinking, which seemed to help her relax her guarded persona, which allowed for a more open and honest communication. It was 6 months after my hard lesson with Jade, and I chatted about the experience to Vic. Little did we know that she herself was about to go through a similar experience. Whenever I offered to visit Vic, she would refuse and make excuses as to why she couldn't meet up. I suggested one time that I could visit her and bring my guitar. Maybe then we could have a sing-song. She still avoided the question and remained elusive. It seemed strange to me at the time. I had a suspicion that she felt that I was sexually attracted to her. But in truth, my mind was firmly with Isabel. That, and also the fact that the Jade episode had left me weary of any future romantic entanglements. An acquaintance of mine gave me a book to read, Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. The book was the usual self-actualization stuff, but the main thing that I took from the book was to stop my addictions. So I decided to take a vow of celibacy and made a promise to myself that I would no longer engage in sex with anyone that I didn't truly love or see a future with. Well, it was like the devil heard me. Women would throw themselves at me, both at work and at home. But I stayed strong and remained determined and stuck to my vow. About 2 months after my pledge, Vic rang me, and my vow came up in our conversation. A couple of days later, she invited me to her house. She confirmed to me later that my vow had given her the confidence to invite me over. She also pointed out that when we first met, she felt that I came across as a predator. I was quite upset with her comment, but I later applied the golden rule and became aware that she wasn't totally wrong. My needy energy body was obviously giving off a different signal to the one that I was consciously aware of. When together at Vic's house, we spent hours talking about our lives, warts and all. The conversation flowed with ease. On one particular day, after an evening at Vic's, I returned home to my father's house, where I'd been living since returning to Hemsworth. I sat down to watch a film, which in itself was bizarre, as I didn't normally watch TV. The film was Jerry Maguire, starring Tom Cruise, and at the time I wondered what the hell I was doing watching TV at 2 a.m. in the morning, especially since I had to work early the next day. I became aware that the plot of the film had a message for me. The message being that you don't shoplift the pootie from a single mum. That line of dialogue seemed to shout at me. I didn't think I was pinching any pootie from anyone. At least that's what I thought. I decided to take the advice given out by Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character, Rod Tidwell. And I decided I would do the talk. The next time Vic invited me to her house, I approached the subject in an attempt to clarify our situation. I explained about the message that I had received, and I reiterated that I was waiting for Isabel and I saw our relationship as purely platonic. I told her, I haven't even met your children, so why I needed to do the talk, I had no idea. I went on to say that I was also being given a picture in my mind's eye of Catwoman, which I felt meant that she, Vic, was hiding something from me. Vic said she felt that I wasn't ready to hear what she had to say. Her comment teased my curiosity. Eventually, she came clean. Vic began telling me that Isabel would never come back, and that she, Vic, had been waiting for me. She explained that she had prayed for someone to be sent to her, someone who could help her, someone who could sing and play the guitar. And here you are. I wasn't convinced about her revelation, but eventually my mind cleared, and I told her that I still wished to wait for Isabel, as that was my future. Vic said that she understood and that she would wait for the outcome. We met every night over the following week, staying up until the early hours chatting. I would then have to leave as I was up early for work the following day. I was still sticking to my vow, and to be honest, I loved the non-sexual interaction I had with Vic. The lack of sleep took its toll on us both, and we were both drunk with fatigue. It was almost as if the tiredness allowed us to relax and communicate better. Vic didn't need her usual bottle of wine to relax. The fatigue was enough. We talked about almost everything. We even played around with telepathy. Vic didn't believe it was real or even possible. But I would ask her to name a colour that I was thinking about. When I told her that the answer was correct, she laughed and said that I was tricking her. I assured her that I wasn't, but she still didn't believe me. It soon became apparent that Vic and I had fallen for one another. My annoyance towards fate, caused by being guided so strongly to wait for Isabel, and the fact that she didn't come back, was now replaced by a smile. A smile due to the fact that I had been sent someone far better for me. It was as if my blinkers had been taken off. I could now see that Vic was not only great company and a lovely person on the inside, but also gorgeous on the outside. Things seemed to have been turned completely upside down. Normally, I would have been blinded by a girl's good looks, only then to discover that that is all they had, good looks and no depth. Often in my life, I am guided in a direction by my subconscious to learn a particular lesson. While waiting for Isabel, I had many lessons to learn and overcome. Once the lessons were truly learned, then the reward was revealed. The reward on this occasion was Vic, a woman with looks and depth, and so my next lessons began. On returning home one night, I texted Vic, telling her that I was sending her a message telepathically. She replied, saying that she didn't receive anything, so I left it at that, and I bid her a good night. The following day, she contacted me and asked me if we could meet up. So we went for a drive to a local beauty spot, and while walking around the lake there, Vic turned to me. She asked me what I'd sent her telepathically the night before. It was quite a tangent, a question that seemed to come out of nowhere. Why? Did you get something? I asked. No, she said. Please tell me what you sent. Then I know it's real. I looked at her with authenticity and explained that I'd sent her a message saying that I would marry her one day. She smiled and said, "Oh, Rob, I can't believe it." I did receive pictures, 3 pictures in fact. The first picture was of a diamond wedding ring. The second picture was of a yin and yang symbol. And the third picture was a cherub with a bow and arrow. Vic and I were married 4 months later. It was a dawn wedding, and we were married beneath a smiley tree in the very woods where my love for nature was born. We settled into marriage the best that we could. 2 damaged souls trying their best. Eventually, it became very difficult to cope with our different ways of communicating. But we were determined to keep going. We knew it was going to be hard, but we both felt that we'd be matched together in heaven to learn from one another. I, due to what had happened to me in my past, had become very alienated from everyday life and concentrated on the spiritual side of myself. I had fled the earthly life to live in the airy inner planes of self-reflection and the mystical. Also, after many years of entertaining other people, I decided to no longer be like Tigger, trying to entertain everybody else. Although I felt content, I had become quite a serious person. Vic had parents who were both earth elementals. Their grounded personalities, along with her own responsibilities, which include 4 children, gave her a persona that was very logic-based. Vic, due to her own challenges, had become more aware of the mystical side of life. However, her earthiness often seemed to hold her back. Her lack of belief in telepathy is a case in point. Vic was also so sensitive that she became insensitive at times. That may sound strange, but what I mean to say is that she was so busy reacting to everything that she was feeling that her energy body kept shutting people out. She seemed to me to be like my mother, and looking back, I had become more like my father. How bizarre then that Vic and I had the exact same elemental mix as my parents. I was born in early August like my mother, and Vic was born in late July, like my father. We were all Leos. I, due to my life struggles, had gone from being like my mother to being more like my father, whereas Vic, born like my father, after life struggles had become more like my mother. We had both gone from one extreme to the other. That, and also the fact that when I first met Vic, she had 4 children, just as my mother had 4 children when she met my father. This seemed ample proof to me that history was indeed repeating itself. After a year of marriage, our reflections brought much conflict. Vic's anger and my demands were making learning from one another very testing, to say the least, even for 2 people who were very aware that they had much to learn from one another. Thoughts that I should leave her and take the advice I had often given to my own parents came to my mind. At the time, I didn't have my father's bubble to wrap myself in, so her anger got through to me. I was insistent not to close down. After so many years on antidepressants, I didn't wish to go back to that. I felt that if I couldn't tolerate the life that I was experiencing, then I would change it. However, I eventually, after much battling, had to close my energy flow down to stop things escalating. Vic could sense immediately that I'd stopped the flow of energy. Further proof, if you need it, that the energy exchange exists. Sometimes stopping the flow helped our interaction, de-escalated it. Sometimes it made it worse, escalated it. Over time, I began to know which course of action worked best. I use the same method of opening and closing for my clients today to prove that the exchange is a fact. Then I either stay open or close, depending on what the client's needs are. I never really wished to leave Vic, and whenever the thought of leaving her came to my mind, I would receive guidance to keep me going, guidance that I couldn't argue with. On one occasion, while out having a meal, there were 2 ladies sat at the table next to us. One lady was in her 30s and the other lady was in her 80s. The older lady spotted my tattooed wedding ring and mentioned that it was very unusual. Vic showed them that she had the same tattooed wedding ring. She then went on to describe our wedding day. She painted how we were married in the woods at 4 a.m, just before daybreak, on the summer solstice, 21st of June. Vic and I noticed a change in the older lady's demeanour, and Vic asked the lady if she was okay. The lady went on to disclose that her husband had died on the very same day, and also at the same time, 4 o'clock in the morning. Vic and I exchanged a knowing glance. From experience, we both knew that such an exact coincidence was indeed a signpost, and that a message was forthcoming. The lady went on to say that she had been married for 47 years, and she expressed that settling down into marriage was very difficult at first, but it was worth the perseverance. We both felt the message was meant for us, to keep us going, guiding us to show more perseverance in our own marriage, and so we did. Remember, in the last chapter, I wrote about how I communicated love with words and action, fire and earth. Well, Vic taught me to communicate with my heart and mind. We could watch a film together and emotionally connect without saying a word. Just being close was enough, and I no longer needed sexual intimacy all the time, like I had done in the past. I learnt so much around these years, which led to me writing my life awareness course, and then I opened up my life awareness classes, which were popular, very popular indeed.